you look at government regulation overall, though, Bill, do you think that in this country, where you started Microsoft with your own money and a couple of people working together, and I was at the Computer Museum in Silicon Valley, and they had the first boxed version of Windows. And there was a picture of you and the team on the cover, and it looked very almost rudimentary compared to what we see today. Is it still in America the appropriate atmosphere for growing new and young entrepreneurial businesses?
Oh, absolutely. We still, despite all of our complexities and problems, we still have the best system for letting people take risk, helping them get capital, letting bright people come in and join those efforts, creating jobs around them. We are the envy of the world. Now, they're copying some of our good ideas, and unfortunately, our healthcare system, they're not copying some of our bad ideas, and so we have to keep renewing ourselves. Our education system might be the central thing that we've got to renew, but there are amazing companies, Microsoft's, Berkshire's being started today that will improve the world.
Well, secondary education has become so outrageously expensive. Are we pricing forget the lower class, the middle class, out of a good education?
Bill knows more about that than I do. He really does.
But, Charlie, you from California and me, a Berkeley graduate, they've had to hike their prices for University of California, and that's very tough for poor children.
It is, but if you look at the quality of the current people at Berkeley, you would be amazed how talented they are.
And Liz, I would say
the main problem of life is not a lack of quality at Berkshire. I mean, at Berkeley.
We'll
Berkeley has fabulous quality right now.
And if you were to ask the three of us, if we were being born today, where we would choose to be born, and I think all three of us would love the idea, we don't want to be born in the United States. This is a terrific society.
People scream about the taxes, and they say, we're getting it from all angles.
Sure. But, you give me a choice, 200 countries where I could be born today, I'll take the United States without thinking.
Paul Volcker floated the idea of a VAT tax. Charlie, what do you think of the VAT tax?
I think we'll eventually have one.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a good thing.
Why?
Well, the people with the VAT tax system tax in a way that give them an advantage in exporting, and it's a tax that's easy to enforce, and there are terrible troubles with enforcement of many other taxes. No, I think eventually we'll get one. The people that are against it because they think it'll work too well, that the politicians will get too much money and do too many dumb things with it, and there's a good deal to be said for that point of view. But I think we will. I think we will get a VAT tax eventually.
Bill?
Society will have lots of medical innovations that cost money, and government is on the hook for a lot of medical costs. So unless we're going to shrink everything else, total tax revenue will have to go up. Now, getting people to feel comfortable that money's not wasted and that's done the right way, it's going to be tough. But just the medical mission alone requires more revenue in the decades ahead.
There are a lot of manufacturers, Warren, who are terrified about a VAT tax. You've got Berkshire companies that manufacture things. Do you feel the same concern?
I don't feel terrified about taxes in connection with Berkshire. There are a lot of proposals that would increase our taxes. But in the end, we're not taxing enough, unfortunately, or we're spending too much and probably some of each. I mean, we've got a gap of 10 percentage points between what we're raising in taxes and what we're spending. And one way or another, we're going to have to close that gap in a very major way. So if some of those taxes fall on me or some of them fall on Berkshire, that's the way it probably should be.
What is the best way, Charlie, to close that deficit, shrink it?
Well, if we try and not tax at all and solve our problems by printing money, the dangers are so horrible that it makes the fears about the VAT tax diminish. So something that will make it a little easier to raise taxes may be the path of virtue.
We've got an energy issue in this country, obviously. The president came out and said we should start drilling. He'd consider drilling off the East Coast. Then we have this disaster in the Gulf of Mexico. Number one, does Berkshire have any insurance exposure to what's happening in the Gulf of Mexico right now?
I'm sure we have moderate, but it would be moderate. We would have had much more exposure to the earthquake in Chile, and that would be a fraction of what we lost in the Katrina or 9/11. I mean, we are in the business of insuring risk. There was a big winter storm in Europe this year that will cost us more, and by far more probably and that's reflected in our first quarter figures. But I think British Petroleum is largely self-insured. I could be wrong, but it's not a big number.
But it is a big disaster.
It's a big disaster.
And do you think the answer is to continue starting new drilling operations offshore of the U.S.?
I think whenever you find out what went wrong with this, you correct that, but I don't think you determine. You're going to have disasters of some sort. You try to minimize them, but I don't think you write policy based off one incident.
Charlie?
Well, I agree. You can't lose all courage in life because you have a disaster. You pick yourself up and you put in extra safety procedures in what you are doing, but you don't